No.
Why don't we do that during the grants update? If we can do the IUP at the.
Good evening, everyone. This is the Wolcott Village Wastewater Committee meeting. January 2nd, first of the year. First meeting of the year. Maybe we can just go around with introductions. I'm Jim Ryan, chair of the Wastewater Committee. Maybe we could start. Who's online?
Tricia Fowler, resident.
Nate.
Yep, I'm Nathan Kai from Vermont DEC in the indirect discharge and underground injection control programs.
Hi, I'm Ashwaka. I'm from the indirect discharge program as well.
I'm Maria Stadtmuller. I'm a resident.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Emily Hackett. I'm from the design engineer and ARPA for the Clean Water SRF and Village program. Sorry, I'm in the car right now. So,
And in the room?
Seth Jensen from Lamoille County Planning Commission.
Tori Hellwig, Lamoille County Planning Commission.
Peter Lazorchak with Stone Environmental.
Alan Carpenter, Select Board. Bruce Wheeler, Planning Commission. Linda Martin, Select Board.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to review the meeting minutes from our last meeting on December 5th? And any thoughts, comments? Hearing none, motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Sorry.
second it.
Second, Patricia, Bruce. Okay, all those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Everybody have a chance to look at the agenda and anything that we want to add to the agenda or further thoughts on the items that we have?
I just was hoping to add quick discussion on the priority list application at some point.
We want to do that in the grant update, Peter, or a separate section?
Sure, yeah, that probably makes sense.
So just a quick update on our school board meeting last month. They voted yes for the MOU. I think we should all celebrate that. I think that was a all needed victory.
Yay!
Yes, pause and celebrate. So that was one of our big thresholds that we have to get through on our steps in getting our system approved, and with the big one coming up on June 11th. So the school board did want to amend the MOU that we went back and forth on, essentially just holding the school harmless for anything that might impact the well and the tests related to that. And there were the PFOP concerns, groundwater contaminant concerns that some on the board expressed. Elliot Waring did send an updated MOU, which I'm assuming our lawyers, or between LCPC and the town lawyers, would take a final look at before.
Yeah, to date, it has been at Stackpole and French reviewing this and preparing this on,
and they are our LCPC's attorney. I guess I defer to Linda and if the last review should be done by, by the town's attorney.
I guess, that's something I should ask the board.
Mhm.
Whether they're, comfortable with Stackpole and French reviewing it, or they want our attorney to.
Yeah.
So it'd be up to them.
Okay,
Is that the one we got the email today from?
yeah,
That's
it
the
is.
final one. I have not opened it.
Okay,
I can ask them tomorrow night
okay,
how they feel.
okay. That would be great.
That answered one of my questions when you're meeting again, so tomorrow night.
And the school board also agreed that with our June 1st bond vote date and date also for the second question of the siting of the system at the school athletic fields be on the same day. So they seemed okay with that. So we can move forward with getting that vote all set. Linda, I don't know if you wanted to take that up at this meeting, but mentioning whether in fact we do need a bond vote or not, depending on how the money goes, the grant money. Is that something we want to have a conversation at a later point, or what we call it, I guess.
Maybe we need it at the committee. I think we need to do some investigation and figure out the money.
Linda, just tell everyone that, if it's up to 5 years, just so people understand the concept. It doesn't have to be a bond vote if it's less than 5-year loan, right? I mean, that's why we don't know the bottom line. I mean, if anyone's questioning why we're not calling it a bond vote, or we are, it's because of that. We don't know what the bottom line of what we're gonna be asking the taxpayers.
Any other thoughts, questions about the school board vote, the MOU, or our June 11th vote? Okay, flying through the agenda here. Tricia, do you want to take on, we had a outreach committee meeting last
Yeah,
week.
sure.
And we had a lot accomplished in that subcommittee at the outreach committee. That's Bruce and Tori and I and Tricia and Bradley as well. And I'll turn it over to you, Tricia.
Sure. Yes, it was a very productive meeting. Thank you, Tori, for doing a lot of the backside on that one and coming up, but we all worked together on working for some language about, the elevator pitch, as you saw in your packet. That goes through a lot of the information about, the how, when, where, what, why, and I hope you all take a minute and read through it, because we've changed it back and forth a bunch of different times about what is going to hit home with our taxpayers. What are we looking for them to understand fully? And that's why there's also included in that packet was the elevator pitch. Really, that is not something to be really distributed, fully throughout the community, but so we're all talking on the same page. And I think this is what we talked about from the beginning, was to be sure that we all understand the same page about what we're talking about, because it could get way off track if I went off about, building up the community and someone else talks about housing. Let's make sure that we're all talking about this elevator pitch, how it is talking about building our community and this wastewater and why we need it, and how the funding has come down the pike, and how the vote will be in June. As we mentioned at the meeting the other day, as you're having dinner with friends, or you're here in Wolcott doing anything at all, talk about this, get people talking about it, get people on your page, get people so they understand what we're looking for and why we are doing this. I mean, I also have been a resident here for more than 30 years here in Wolcott. I mean, Linda asked me about this whole thing about getting on the wastewater. I think this is fantastic. I mean, for years, we've all driven through Wolcott and you don't really blink an eye. And I mean, if we could get this so we could expand on our little village, this is just great for our community, and especially, like we said at our meeting, Livermore Valley Rail Trail coming through, you're gonna see tons of out-of-state visitors, in-state people looking for parking areas. This is just a great opportunity for all of us. And then as you see in the paperwork, there's a timeline, we put through that talks about what the next steps are, how we're gonna promote it. I'm doing a little bit of front porch forum from my end. But like I said, the more people we can get talking about this, the better we all are gonna be moving down the road. I see we've updated some information on the website, and I also think is it Stone? Are you updating the mapping that we're gonna talk about? Or was
Yep.
it- Okay. So that's really a committee report. If you have any questions, happy, but,
And
that's
just
overview.
Thank you, Tricia. I just wanted to point out that what you were calling the elevator pitch is the document that's a couple of paragraphs that says for committee use only.
Yep.
Just so folks knows what that
Okay. Thanks.
is. And we had a couple of updates, we did a couple of suggestions on, or reviewed the number 5 on the Wolcott wastewater. And more of the nuts and bolts of how the system is gonna work. And we may condense that down a little bit more. But just so folks know, what does this look like? What does that mean? Are we gonna be able to see any of it, or is it all underground? And just questions like that. And the town forest, using the right of way there to pump it up to the school. So,
And the other thing too is think about this, if possibly MSI could develop those buildings so we get some real, retail or some real businesses that, are hiring people at a livable wage. I mean, there's a lot of components that all play into the why this is important to Wolcott, Vermont.
and Bradley's done a really nice job on updating our webpage and the
Yes.
documents on the webpage, and a lot of the documents that we're sharing in these meetings are also on the website. Tricia and Tori, how about we task you with, do you want to lead our discussion on one of our timeline items? That we had proposed a February public outreach meeting. And potentially, just either instead of our regular meeting, or just before or just after our regular meeting. It seems like we have a lot of work that we still need to do, so we probably still have to have a meeting, but maybe we can have a shorter meeting. That we can obviously have the public come to, but we also talked about having our first public outreach meeting and maybe a mini presentation, or just discussing what we want that to look like, and do we want to in fact still have that? And what does that look like? And is this February the right time to have that, if we are going to have that? Talking about the public outreach meeting that we proposed in our timeline, Linda. And as part of which would be February 6th. Correct.
I think that's too tight. Tori, your thought? I don't know, I've done a lot of plannings and meetings and this and that. I personally would prefer if we said we were gonna do it, the March meeting. I mean, we've been talking about, are we gonna send a flyer along, or how are we gonna promote this? How are we gonna attract people to it? I mean, what's gonna be the big draw? And as we all know, I mean, it's gonna be, the bottom line, the dollar factor, but, how can we
March
make it-
meeting will be town meeting.
We have to shift our meeting
Okay.
in March. Because it's town meeting.
Linda, we can't talk at town meeting, right?
You can say whatever you want at the end. But
Okay.
trouble is most people have left.
Right, I know.
More of an announcement, I guess.
Can we have a booth outside, Linda?
Yeah, you can have a booth inside.
Yeah. You know, like when people come in the door?
Yeah, we usually do it up further, but yeah.
I don't know, we should talk about that. I mean, because I would go to Wolcott anyway, so I'd be more than happy to do a booth and chat about this to people as they come in the door. You know, at the end means nothing because everyone left, but if we could, when people come in and I could talk about the wastewater, this could be really good. And then if we were having a meeting, and if it was even like right after this, if we could hand out cards to people that come, the people that come to town meeting are the people that are gonna vote at this meeting. I mean, we all know this. We've seen it over and over, so I don't know. Tori, do you,
Can we, no, I like the idea of a booth, Tricia, a table
yeah,
with a couple of us there.
uh-huh,
But back to the question, can we make an announcement at town meeting, Linda,
Oh, yes.
that we
In the beginning.
we're proposing this system and come to the June vote, at least if we have a few minutes to talk about it at town meeting, even if it's just an announcement.
Yeah, invite them to the March, whatever, get together you're planning to learn more about it.
So so I'm clear, are we saying that we're not ready for the outreach meeting in February? And we should wait till we make an announcement at town meeting and then have a outreach meeting, say the following week or something like that?
I think so. I think you're gonna hit on those people that are actually gonna vote on this. I mean, I've been to enough town meetings. I've been to a lot of town meetings in Wolcott. And those are the people that are gonna come and vote again at this next one. You know, I mean, I could tell you, we all could tell you who neighbors you've seen at a town meeting and who you have not. So I don't know. Tori, do you think we can make February?
It's definitely feeling tight and
Yeah.
it sounds like there's gonna be more meaningful touch points with the community during and after town meeting.
Yeah. I
And
agree.
then-
I like the idea of plugging it at town meeting, but having it shortly thereafter.
Right. And then that's when we can incorporate more postings like on Front Porch Forum before and say, come to town meeting, vote at town meeting, but also come and learn about the wastewater system. Wolcott wastewater. I mean, you know what I mean? It could be a good way to plug our town meeting to get people to our town meeting, but also the wastewater through another set of voices.
So on that note, so we have to shift the March meeting. We should probably start thinking about that, especially if we're gonna do an outreach push at that March meeting. Do we want to just go for the Tuesday after, or do we want to shift the days of the week? Seems like that first week of March is gonna be a little crazy, right? And I know other people we have planning commission members on this committee and Linda on the select board and I don't know, other
That's
commitments.
why keeping it on the same day is better, I think.
You mean Tuesday the following week, maybe?
Yeah, so March 12th would be the week after, the Tuesday after town meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good, Seth, that you brought that date in. So next week, when we have our committee meeting, before you take off, Jim, I think at that meeting, one of the agenda items should be when we're gonna make plugs about this March 12th meeting, like on the Front Porch Forum. And that would be a good time. I don't know, are you gonna get in touch with Tommy Gardner and talk to him? You know, as we talked about at the last meeting? At the paper?
Yes, yeah, we talked, well, just so folks know that on the outreach subcommittee, we talked about engaging the news and citizen. And Seth had a connection there and maybe do like a sit down interview kind of story that's in the News and Citizen and with a walk in the village and to go over. Here's the village, there's the river, there's the ledge, you know, so maybe even to have them take some pictures of what the village looks like. And the benefits of the system, that would be great. So yeah, we need to set that up.
Yeah, timing wise, when do you want that to hit the press? Like before town meeting or
Yeah.
soonish? Yeah,
If it could hit the press like a week before town meeting, Seth,
yeah,
so we back it up so it comes the Friday before that, you know, we make the paper. So the 2 weeks before town meeting, the interview happens somewhere, or 2, 3 weeks.
okay,
But, right, if it could happen the week before, so then people are reading about this, so it's not too far off, but it's close enough to, you know, get people's yanks thinking about what's happening in Wolcott.
yeah, that makes sense.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, I do think too that, you know, having sort of the technical piece and the piece from LCPC is important. It's going to be very important for your voters to know that there's, you know, deep support for this among people in Wolcott. This is a locally driven project. So we should, I think, have some folks from this committee interviewed by the News and Citizen as well to, you know, provide that perspective.
Bruce and I said we'd
You would.
we'd be there with you.
Yeah.
But it'd be great to have you there and the two of us.
Okay, great.
I
And
agree.
if Linda wants to come.
The
I don't know
partner,
if you would.
Yeah. the bigger
Representing
we
the select
show
board would be
that,
great too.
Yeah.
right. I mean, working even with, you know, DEC and everyone, I think this all needs to come out. Like this is not just some harebrained idea from someone in Wolcott, Vermont. This is a combination between, you know, what the governor said about wastewater and the whole big picture. I think that's what's gonna grab people is this is a big one. This isn't, you know, and I didn't mean harebrained, but I sort of
Yeah,
did.
no, I understand.
Okay, thanks.
Any of our DEC friends like to participate in the News and Citizen maybe interview, even if it's not in person? That we
Hey,
can.
Jim, this is Emily. We would love to be involved in that.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Emily. And just while we're on this outreach discussion, it just seems like we should try to, and again, this might be where Emily and others can help us, and Peter and Seth that have been involved in other efforts in Burke and Westford, the lessons we can learn from why those failed. And it seems like we're in good shape here, but we want to make sure that we're vigilant and making sure, maybe even for us to have a, you know, an internal discussion of what we can do and learn from those lessons from those other towns. And I think losing by 42 votes in Westford, that was stinging.
Yes.
In my mind, I can get 42 people out to vote. How many votes?
friends.
What's that?
Oh,
Sorry, is that
This is-
JB?
yeah. I would just say, and I love the enthusiasm and all the good, you know, getting it out there at town meeting. If there's one thing, it will be helpful to stress that the select board is supporting this project. I think that's, you know, in 28 years of Vermont stuff, Westford was the first time I had a select board actively ambivalent about a project that they had put on the bond warning. And knowing that the select board, the elected officials are not only behind this, but recognize the need and are supporting it, I think it's just going to make a world of difference. So
And-
anything that can
and-
be done at town meeting is huge.
And leading the effort.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if that could be part of the announcement, that this is from the select board that's leading this effort and form this committee and has applied for all these grants.
I think that, yeah, the select board leadership is important. I think if you start having sort of a social media firestorm, a strategy for dealing with it in a diplomatic way, as opposed to just kind of hoping it burns out.
No, we did talk about this.
You did talk about that. Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
maybe we should have said more earlier. We
No,
did
it's
talk about this. We did know that we are going to get some, like in my own personal, I mean, as you know, I've have been involved in these
Yeah.
shitstorms a long time. It is like, let's catch it in the bud. Let's like, as soon as someone starts, let's reach out to them and say, can we talk about this? Tell me what your concerns are. Let's see. I mean, most of the time, like I've always found, people want to be heard.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, I think, you know, you all see Morristown has sort of calmed down a little. It's because these people have been heard, you know, and yeah, we did talk. Sorry, and I didn't mean to interrupt you,
No,
Seth, but
no, it's fine.
I
Thank you,
want
Trish.
you to know that we have discussed this in length.
And we have to be prepared for a back and forth on Front Porch Forum.
Yep.
And us being diplomatic, having all of our ducks in a row, having all of our talking points. And we have to think about that too.
Then I don't know if I'm a good one to be the representative. Just saying, no, I'm good, yeah.
So just to clarify what we just said, so we're looking at the March 12th as a wastewater committee meeting instead of having another town meeting. But also that would be our meeting and an outreach event. And I just want to, maybe the outreach committee can have discussions on what the format of that would look like and present it to the committee at our February meeting. But I would think some sort of a technical presentation, maybe a little bit of a version that we did at the school would be important, but not just technical. It's a combination of the why Wolcott wastewater, major points. Why is this a good thing? About the grant funding that we've already secured and are also pursuing it right now. And some of the technical, what would this look like? Where would it be? What's the service area? So yeah.
The other thing I would add is, yes, the why Wolcott, because of the how, when, and all that. But I also think we need to talk about a little bit like the flooding that's happened, like Linda, you could talk about, like that's happened on School Street. I mean, these people don't even have homes anymore to live in, really, without, you know, let's get this wastewater system in. So, you know, it can build up downtown Wolcott a little bit. I mean, you know, you're not looking for, you know, kingdom come, but I think we need to think about, you know, why, like we put in our thing. So, okay.
So maybe we'll have a brief meeting of the committee and then at 5, and maybe we can do this at 5:30, 6 o'clock, the public outreach part, or whatever the timing seems. We want people to be able to get home from work and maybe have a bite to eat and come here. So I don't know, 6 o'clock or something like that. I don't know, can we offer snacks? I don't know what we can do budget wise, and cheese and crackers or something. I don't know, but it's something to think about. So we can put that on the to-do list for the outreach subcommittee.
It'd be good too to hear their concerns early on.
And maybe if we can, between Peter and Amy and JB, if we can have a technical person there to talk about the system.
Yeah, of course.
That would be great. Yeah. Okay. All right. And so we were talking about the March meeting. We will have a February meeting. I think it's February 6th.
Yep.
Before that. Okay, grants update. Seth, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So, the town, as you know, has received a $2.5 million grant from DEC through ARPA for the Village Wastewater initiative. Towns can be eligible for up to $4 million through that program. So I worked with Linda to pull together a letter requesting an additional 1.5 million so that could potentially receive the full amount up to that cap, which if you were able to receive that, plus the $800,000 from the Community Recovery and Revitalization Fund that we talked about last month, the town would be getting pretty close to at least the capital cost of the project as currently estimated, funded and potentially not needing to borrow for construction. And I think that's the goal, is to get as close to that as possible. I think whether that additional funds comes through depends a little bit on what the funding world looks like at the state level and what happens with some other wastewater projects. But we're kind of in a point of it's worth asking. And I think it's, Wolcott's in pretty good shape in terms of the engineering, in terms of the site access and where you're going with public engagement. So it seems worth making that request.
Seth, is there anything that can be done to convince these folks? Who are they? What could we do to convince?
Emily is,
Emily.
Yeah, that would ultimately.
Emily, what do we do?
Are you still driving, Emily?
I am, no, I'm still in the car. I am here
Okay.
though. I received the letter, thank you. And I probably won't be able to make any decisions for until the next IUP round, which goes to the PPL application that Peter was talking about. But we received your letter, and most likely I would say that there's the potential of being put on the trickle down list for additional funds, and wherever the points fall in terms of the PPL is kind of the order that will happen in. So it's really important to have a really good priority list application to maximize your points.
Emily, would we know that before the June vote?
I don't know, to be honest. Last year's IUP, or the one we're on currently, didn't get out until September. We're taking the applications earlier, almost 6 weeks earlier than we usually do. So there is the potential we might know by then. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. But we have to have all this money reallocated that's not going to be used by the other communities. All that money needs to be reallocated and put in an agreement ready to spend by the end of 2024. So decisions will be made before September.
And Emily, is that the Burke and Westford monies that were previously awarded?
Currently, Westford still has their grant. West Burke has other land. Just because of a community has a negative bond vote, they still have time to get a bond vote or shift their project a little bit in terms of size. So West Burke is going with a smaller project. So that, right. So, but we have some communities that are really struggling just to find a disposal field. And I can just tell you what a big win that was last week for you guys. Can't tell you how excited we were in the office when I got the email about the MOU. So yeah, I just don't know. And we may have quite a few decisions made, but by mid-March on some of the grants where disposal field is just not available for communities for whatever reason, landowner backing out or just can't find a suitable site for their communities.
So Emily, those communities are voting on town meeting in March. That's why you would know in March.
No, some of it's related to the milestones in the table.
Okay.
That is in the ARPA grant agreement, which is pretty much identical for almost every town. So, there is some wiggle room by weeks, but not months, I guess to say. So we have some communities that were working on a sales and purchase agreement towards the end of the year here, but because of the flooding that occurred, some meetings were canceled, so they're delayed a little bit in getting it signed. We're not going to penalize them for that because flooding is kind of out of their control. But yeah, I just don't know how the cards are all going to play out until probably March, April timeframe is what I'm thinking. And then we have to make decisions in the office about where the money's gonna go.
It's, it's possible before June, but it's not definite by any means.
Right, it's possible, but I just can't give an exact date at this time.
Well, also, we're gonna have to come up with the bond vote language and warn it and all of that. So that's gonna be even tighter than just June.
When does that language have to be ready, Linda?
Well, a normal vote, just Australian ballot vote is 40 to 30 days before the vote. I don't know if it's longer for a bond vote.
I believe it is. I don't remember the
Yeah,
exact
it's a
line.
lot of more hoops you have to go through.
This is probably an item for more discussion at a future meeting. But again, with the Westford experience, considering whether perhaps you do one vote that's just the Australian ballot item of, do you do this? Do you accept the grants? Do you move forward with the project? Then another one that is the bond vote that if you need more money, do you authorize borrowing? And then you have the voters' authorization to move forward in the event that you don't need to borrow, the bids come in reasonable, or you have some flexibility to scale down maybe the service area, some of those extra legs, if prices do come in high. I haven't actually run that idea by DEC, so if Emily's head is exploding on the screen right now. But especially with this potential of, a significantly larger grant than that you might not know until September, it might give you some ability to get voter authorization and move forward with this little bit of, squishy uncertainty that you have with the funding landscape.
The only problem with that, we'd have three.
You'd have 3 articles, right? And that might freak people out. So
Might confuse people.
Yeah. Emily turned on her camera, which makes me nervous.
Send me that idea, Seth, on an email. Could
Okay.
you please? Yeah, I mean, the only time we require a bond vote is when you have to borrow money. So I think that's a really important distinction to understand, is that the grant itself does not require a bond vote. What requires a bond vote is if you have to borrow the money, any money. So I think that's an important distinction that should be noted here.
So any money like $100,000? Any amount of money? And
Correct.
that's
Any
it?
amount of money that you would have to let's use the word potentially borrow, right? You would have to bond for that. The ARPA grant itself doesn't require a bond because you're not borrowing money.
But your department does?
Right. So if you're getting a Clean Water SRF loan, right, that's considered borrowed money. I'm not sure how the subsidy works for that, to be honest. Lynette would know right off the top of her head. But from a loan perspective, if you're borrowing, I'm not sure that the subsidy would be considered borrowed. That I'd have to get. I'd have to find that information out. I don't think it is, but if you borrow 20 cents, 20 cents has to be bonded, right? So, so just keep that in mind. And I think, talking through kind of the Westford scenario a little bit. I mean, JB and Seth, we and Peter and Amy we're all part of that. And the bond that they were going for 400,000 was really a belt and suspenders approach. It was a contingency on a contingency.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be something to talk through for this project. Because their share of the project was from their local ARPA. So if you guys have any local ARPA left, might want to consider that. But Just wanted to put that out there, that it's borrowed money that is required for the bond.
I mean, this is probably. So it is possible if the town doesn't need to borrow money at all, that the school vote could be it only vote in June 11th. It's a thought that just occurred to me that I'm wondering do you have the thought on that, Emily? If the town is in a place where they don't need to borrow any money, do they need a formal authorization to move forward with the ARPA grant, like just an Australian ballot vote? Or so it could just
No,
be this.
Right. So in the ARPA grant, we'll pay for you guys to do the bond vote, right? We'll pay for
Right.
those services that are required to do that. But it does not require a bond vote unless you're borrowing. So if the town is not borrowing any money, then you don't have to bond. And the school vote, I guess, would be the vote for the community. Right. So,
Yeah.
right. But we do require a bond vote if you're borrowing money by the end of August.
Okay.
Of this, which is crazy to say this year. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if the town has any local ARPA left that could be used for their share. Because that's what, Westford was doing. So, but that's just a thought out there. So throw that out there.
Okay.
For you guys to consider and think about. I think there's lots of options. I know JB probably has some suggestions as well. So
Hey guys, this is JB. I think we need to assume that the town at least could hypothetically need to borrow something. And bond vote language is very often contingent. Your Westford's authorization was if, when, and as costs were incurred such that borrowing was required, shall the vote be authorized. And Wolcott can do that too. Given that we won't know on the grant until September and bond vote has to be August, I think we need to assume that in June, there would at least be a vote on bond authorization with contingencies. The important thing is telling the voters that that's the last money you'll spend. That all grants will be, if all grants are exhausted and there's still capital cost, then and only then does the select board incur that debt. I think we've sent the Westford language, which was structured in exactly that way. And we could certainly do that for Wolcott. Our town attorney was fine with that. And the bond bank is fine with that. So if that helps, I do think we need to think that June will have both the school and the bond vote. And very quickly, and Tori, I can help you with this, or Linda can help. Let's get the schedule for when the bond vote warnings need to go out, because that's going to direct a lot of the outreach material.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, JB. It's a silly question. Is the amount potentially borrowed, even if it's very high contingency and conservative amount, does that number appear on the bond vote on the article, or just allowing that?
You gotta put a number to it. It's up to a certain amount, and that's where Peter, is going to be able to advise, and Lynette and Emily are going to be able to advise on what do we think we need. And then the protection for taxpayers is, if, when, and as all grants are exhausted and indebtedness is required. You do want to put the amount in there though, and this is the Montgomery and Burke situation. That's where it can get like, but you're authorizing that much. But if and only if all other grants are exhausted. And I think that's the protective language for the taxpayers. But yeah, we're going to have a number, and it will have 7 figures probably, or at least a high 6. Hopefully very, very, very low 7, but you know, it could be with contingencies and floodproofing. We need to be braced for asking the voters for something.
Thinking we might take a look at the Better Places grants. There's like 3 per year, 50,000 max or something like that. We have to raise local money to do a third of the match. Whatever we did, but I just wonder if that would be a possibility.
And just a question, Emily, can we tell the taxpayers what's out there on the table that we've applied for? So they understand too? I mean, you know, if you said, yeah, okay, we want a bond vote for $1.2 million, but you understand we've applied for this and this and this. I mean, I understand we can't give them any kind of, you know, guarantees, but so they understand how much money has actually been applied that
Right.
we're hoping to get down the road. I think that's important too to our taxpayers here in town.
I don't really, I'm not. Yes, I can see the both edges of the sword on that one,
Yeah,
right? Because if you don't get it, some people might see it as, well, we voted yes because we thought we were getting it, right? Versus,
yeah, I understand.
right? So, yeah, I don't see that you can't tell them, but I also think you need to be very, very mindful of the language and what you tell them in many
Okay.
ways. So I would just keep that in mind.
Okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, that's like making a promise that is
Mhm.
only half a promise. Yeah, I get it. Thank you.
Okay, so Peter, you want to talk about the priority list?
Yeah, so we need to submit the priority list application by the 16th, which is coming right up. There is a select board component. I don't think, Emily, there isn't any place that Linda or anyone else from the select board has to sign the application, but you do have to discuss it and sort of agree as a body for us to submit it.
Correct.
Which I believe last year Seth came to one of your meetings and sort of presented it. And then there's a box to check on the form that pretty much says the date that the select board talked about it and agreed to be submitting it. So Amy and I were actually hoping that next Wednesday was your meeting. But tomorrow will be the only meeting between now and the 16th, right? So are you able to discuss it then, or do we need to do some sort of a special meeting?
Yeah, we can make an adjustment to the agenda. I mean, so what I'm hearing you say is we've really already discussed it, so it's just reminding the select board that we discussed it and we'll figure out when, and you just want, you know, confirmation that we can continue to move forward. Is that what you're?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's something we have to do annually, and it's pretty much filled out identically as last year with a few exceptions that I can point out. One of the other things I want to discuss specifically about the sort of the point system that Emily was talking about is in the past, we haven't identified any failed systems within the community, partially because we don't want to, you know, sort of single anyone out. Amy and I were wondering, and so therefore you get, you know, 0 points for that particular line item. Not the end of the world. We still get, I think, 20 out of 25 points for that water quality section. However, if due to this flooding event or any other knowledge within town, we can change our response to that and say that we do know of at least one failed system or or more if there are more.
And be anonymous? No, you have to put in a property name.
Good question. Emily, as long as I think it has to be documented, but I don't really know what that means.
Yeah, documented in the PER. But if we know of one since the PER was issued because of flooding, we don't need to know the property. We just need to know it was failed. But failed is a very specific word. So not one that's failing, but has failed. So, and I would imagine there might be some of those homes. And you don't have to
Does
say which
failed-
homes,
Does
but
failed mean totally no good? Does it mean, damaged,
So.
have to be
so-
repaired? What does?
I'll respond. Feel free to jump in, Emily, but typically failed means either surfacing effluent on the ground or backing up into the house. It doesn't, it could be a failed or failing system that only happens a couple times a year. Seasonally or whatnot. So I don't think it has to be a continual problem. But that's generally the definition. If it were washed away because of the flood or something, then that obviously would be failed because it's not working, right?
right. And I guess the question I have is, were any of them failed due to flooding? And and a lot of times
Yes, there are some.
that currently can't use their home because they don't even have a septic due to flooding, is what I would think.
I
You don't
know.
have to say names. You don't have to say names or anything. We would ask you not to, but
Emily, what you just, your definition of
Right.
not being able to use the system and Peter's definition were two different definitions. Could it be either?
Well, I mean, if you have a house, right, and their system is completely gone due to flooding or unusable, they're going to have to go in for a permit to put a new system in. Nathan, would you guys consider that failed? I would.
I was thinking
Yeah.
if what Linda was saying would be that I would imagine that there are systems that might be surface ponding or potentially backing into the house, especially after the flood, but still being used.
Friends, if it's any help, in 1998 in Warren Village, when there was a flood that we thought was a bad flood at the time, there was visible, and DEC's finding then, and this is when telephones had cords, but bear with me. The determination was that there were systems that had clear and evident physical damage beyond irreparable condition at certain properties. That was the definition of failed that got us those points for the Warren Village system. And I remember distinctly, it was sort of clear and evident damage. One or more components are not repairable. I would think that would be the case in Wolcott without having to investigate who's going into or out of a house. And there was no ponding or backup because the drain fields were gone. So if we have something with clear and evident damage to one or more components that's beyond being able to be repaired, I would think that would qualify as failed.
Or potential septic contamination of a well, which might have been the case as well.
We didn't have any well issues.
I mean here,
but here, yeah. That one I can't speak to, but damage to components I know we had in the last flood in Wolcott. Probably both this year.
Nate, were you going to say something? I think you were trying to jump in there.
Yeah, I was just going to agree that, the most of what we've been discussing here would be classified as a failed system. I mean, if if major components are washed away or damaged beyond repair, that would be failed. If if you have ponding effluent on the surface, that is something we would consider failed. So yeah, I mean, most of what we've been discussing here would be considered failed per our permitting parameters. So, and per the failure language in our indirect discharge permits. So, and I believe the wastewater system and potable water supply program, which permits the smaller, under 6,500 gallons per day systems, would be about the same.
Thank you, Nate. It sounds
Yeah,
like we-
Peter, it sounds like from what I'm hearing that there has been at least one in the community due to the flooding. And I would put that on the priority list application.
Okay, great. We'll
And
update it for that.
we'll internally have that discussion over those points for that portion. But I would say it sounds like based on the conversations we've had over the last couple of months that there's at least one failed system due to flooding in the community.
Yep. Okay, great. I guess that's all I had for that. And I'll send you another email tomorrow just with like an updated version and you can let me, oh yeah. I think Bruce and Linda, yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you have any questions, Linda, feel free to reach out to us. All right, for those online, I'll try to see if I can share the updated map, if I'm allowed to here. Let's see. Trying to remember what we did. I don't normally use.
Might have to.
There's some Zoom setting on there.
I don't use Zoom enough to know where I'm even supposed to share. Oh. I just have to find my map and my files that are open. Okay, bear with me for one more moment. All right. How'd that work?
No, that's not.
Yeah.
Further goes out to travels.
So this really is just a map that's in the PER with a few adjustments based on our conversations last month. And so this is option 2, which is what the committee selected, which has the spur beyond the Nazarene Church and the spur up sort of to the east along 15 beyond School Street. What we did to this map today was we did change the colors of the parcel boundaries to just identify the different types of parcels. So the red ones are commercial parcels. The light blue are like multiple apartments on the property. And the green are townhome parcels. And then purple, which doesn't pop out very well, is the rest, which are single family residences. When you add all that up, there are 35 single family residences and 13 that are sort of beyond what we would call a single ERU, which is a equivalent residential unit of flow. So we kind of in the table in the 13, we lumped the municipal the multifamily and the commercial all together. So I know JB, it's good to have you actually on the call also, because I know you took our flow information and I think that's how you came up with what I think Jim was referring to, which is somewhere around 69 or 70 ERUs. Does that sound right, JB?
Yep, it sure does.
Okay.
What's an ERU?
So an ERU is, if you have a commercial property, it's taking and converting their flows to a standard of one residential unit, which is normally 245 gallons or thereabouts
Day.
a day. And so like if you had 1,000 gallons per day on a commercial property, that would be about 4 ERUs.
But
Standardizes everything, yes. And that's sort of the normal way folks would get billed for their usage is number of ERUs they need for their property or want for their property.
That was 69%. Or number, or,
I actually don't have that in front of me, but that was,
yeah, I thought it was somewhere around 70. Yeah, so that sounds about right.
what I did pull up was the, I just was referring back to our flows presented in the PER. And then I think I mentioned this, but I did want to confirm that those properties all the way down School Street, maybe just around where Flatiron Road comes in, those are all included in the service area. We did have a little bit of back and forth at one point where we had the quarter-mile zone drawn slightly wrong, and it was dissecting a few of those properties. So we've alleviated that confusion, and those are all part of the service area. I will also point out, I don't know, I kind of raised the question today. There is kind of one more property to the west on 15 that isn't that much farther that I didn't know if there was a reason why we chose not to include them. And I don't know if anyone on the committee knows anything about the property. But it's on the northern side of 15.
Peter, just
West, going towards Morrisville.
Yeah.
I don't know why you didn't include it.
we talk, so just so we're all on the same page here, we're not talking about the 0.25 buffer, or are we?
I don't think there's much to talk about, but we are talking about that. If you look at this map, the dotted yellow line, kind of the oval shaped thing is our service area that.
Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's some houses on the bottom of East Hill that are in that oval. They're kind of way outside the village.
Yeah, I guess I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm kind of misspeaking a little bit on service area versus village designation and within the buffer that can qualify to be part of this with the ARPA funding.
Okay.
So
just the yellow, then not the dash, but just.
Yeah, we didn't try to go out of our way to get properties that didn't make sense to connect. So if you look, the magenta colored line is sort of the force main as we've drawn it. And really, we're talking about coming down 15 to School Street all the way down Flatiron. And then the spur as shown just beyond School Street to the east or south, depending on how you look at it on 15 there.
So there would be, on 15 west, there'd be the Nazarene Church. And then heading west, there'd be 2 more houses, if we're talking about.
Yeah, actually 4 more.
I mean, on just on the,
Four more?
just on the Lamoille side of the river. There'd be 4 more altogether.
We have 4 more connections.
Well, one of
Yes.
them's just a barn on the riverside.
Is that, okay?
It's just a workshop.
Make a note of that. That
One.
might have been counted as a connection.
And the other side is an abandoned building.
An abandoned trailer.
Yeah. Kurt Billings, abandoned trailer.
Okay, this is
And
good
then
to
I don't
know.
know what that other stuff is. Is this Dana Gravels? But I don't think it is. What is that?
Would you mind, pointing to that up there? And maybe so Peter can go with his cursor, so the folks online can see what we're talking about.
Way up here?
All the way up near the Nazarene, up, right there.
Yeah, so,
The eyes aren't-
That's,
The ranch house, right?
that's the good.
This is a house on that riverside? Okay,
That little square thing up in the corner is just a work
this right here.
barn.
Which is the abandoned house, Linda?
It's that trailer that's,
This one in the middle here, right there.
Right across from the red place there.
The one in,
but it has the potential
Connecting.
of getting rid of that mobile home and putting another one in. I mean, it just isn't there today. But
Is there-
with septic, it could be.
is there one on the right-hand side, or side of 15, at the very end of the magenta line? Is that?
I think there is a house there.
North side 15, what side?
So if you look at this map, anything with the magenta circles are what we're actually showing as a septic tank pumping station.
Isn't that gravel all the way out there to the right?
Yeah, I think isn't that the
I think
house
so.
for the driveway to the gravel pit?
I think it's Dana.
I don't think it's that far.
They are not in the floodplain. They have a bit of land, I don't know.
Right, because that's right before,
Town Hill.
yeah. And so that would be Dana gravel all the way up there at the end.
I don't think it's that far, though. It seems
No.
like it's just before, it's just just before the road that goes up to the gravel pit. Or just, yeah,
The Grimes.
the Grimes pit is the last road we see that's curved.
Yeah, so I didn't know if it was that trailer, that, that he put in there by that abandoned house,
Yeah,
his cousin or something, nephew. That could be what that is.
You guys, I'm confused, because the Grimes entrance is the golf course road, right, into their pit? That's not the golf course road that I'm seeing. That's
no, it's
east of-
not.
What
Right?
golf course road?
What golf course road?
No, not
There's a
the
golf road.
Golf road.
Golf
golf
road.
No, it's nowhere near that. No, no.
Oh, okay,
I think that road that you see at the top of the map is the one that goes through the Grimes gravel pit.
Right.
Yeah,
okay. Oh, yeah, right up behind. Okay, sorry, I was confused a little bit.
You're a little further west.
Yep, I see.
I mean, it seems to make sense, but knowing that one is a garage. that-
Well, we didn't put the one on the left that is a garage, we didn't put a connection.
Okay.
No.
That little red spot there, it's a woodworking shop. It'd be nice to have a sewage
Okay,
wastewater to that. I think it's a usable building that someday will be who knows, maybe a woodworking shop with a showroom.
can you just
If it's just a really short distance there.
make?
think of who's how.
That's-
That is the.
I'm looking at this thing right here.
Yeah, that was the one I was wondering.
That has, I mean, it has potential for a woodworking shop. It's insulated. People did work woodworking in there. If you have somebody working in there, I would think you need a septic system.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't leave that out if it was a chance. we
Right,
could
because
get
they
it.
used to live in that abandoned mobile home.
Yeah, the mobile home I don't know about.
Yeah,
Do you know his name offhand? Or I
yeah,
can get it from
Edwards.
separate.
He lives in Hyde Park now,
Edwards?
Edwards.
Okay.
Debbie Edwards is. the-
And were some of those taken off, Peter, for ones that are gonna potentially be bought out from FEMA?
We have not changed anything based on that.
Okay.
Would you have that information, Linda?
What do we have, 4?
I have 3 approved.
I'll have to get with you on the addresses of those 3, Linda, and take those off. So that would bring our count down
From 35 to
35 to
32.
32. And maybe potentially more if a couple of these got miscounted as residences.
Well, more have applied but haven't gotten approved.
You know how many have applied?
Mhm. Six
6 total or 6 additional?
totals that would affect this.
I have a system at the corner of School Street and Route 15. I have one system there that house used. I don't know if you added that in.
Looks like that's included.
It is included,
Okay.
but I guess it would be worthy of a conversation if that, whatever you replace there ends up being just a single family residence, or if you envision something.
It'll be more. I think it'll be more than that.
Right, so
Are we counting the old schoolhouses attached to this building?
we did include that. That's all kind of included
Because it might be.
as one connection, I think, at this point.
Okay.
Is the library attached to the system for the office building back there?
It's all connected, yeah, I think it all comes out and goes across the road right now. And we would figure out how we wanted to engineer hooking that all in. That's an example of the Wolcott town office, and whatever the town might envision for the property would be more than an ERU. It would be kind of whatever the town decides it wants to reserve for itself.
Because there is that septic system that's used by this building and has quite a bit of capacity, and then
Correct, yes, there is extra capacity, although I do think it's pretty substandard, and I think if the town's gonna go ahead and do this, I think you want to sort of set an example that,
yeah.
Yeah, I think we figured out that there was about 900 gallons by permit, but if you were going to do anything food related, the system isn't really the type of system you'd want to sustain that kind of use. So, but better to think about a connection there.
Okay, thanks.
Any other thoughts on, so are we pretty much set? Do we need to vote on this, Linda? On the map? And this is a pretty big decision, or how do we want to
I
proceed with
think that
this?
would be good. That way it's
Yeah,
set.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, and there was a couple of questions we had, but as far as the building that Bruce brought up and the abandoned house. But right now, we're gonna count the abandoned house as a hookup, just so we can get our numbers. We have the uncertainty of the FEMA buyouts, there's a few uncertainties, but overall, maybe we can vote whether or not we want to approve this map as we discussed with it, but we still, with some of these lingering questions.
With the addition of that red building down at the west end, or is there a way to include that? I was just gonna.
How do, before we vote, maybe a little more discussion on that, how do folks feel about what we're calling the wood shop. At the very end of the magenta line on 15 heading west out of the village.
I would add it in myself. As much as we can capture, and like Bruce said, you know, if somewhere down the road it become a woodworking shop or showroom, I mean, I personally think we should think for the good of all, and I think that could be a given right there.
Maybe we could do like a conditional, this would tie into a discussion that we're gonna have in a minute on the ordinance. Where we have an opt-out
Right.
Yep,
option,
Yep.
that if this building stays as just a garage or wood shop. Maybe they can opt out, but if someone's gonna live there year round, they have to hook up,
yep, it's good, Jim.
something like that.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was thinking too, along those lines of opting out if it's not really in any new use.
Yeah.
Seems like it would be in their best interest to.
It was a house when I was growing up. There were people living there,
Okay.
not in that particular building, but in
Right.
another house.
Right.
Any other discussion? On the
How
map?
about the corner? I'm still, this is the house. I'm not sure if there was a reason we didn't include. Should we be including that one? Can you guys see my cursor up there?
Yep.
Yeah.
That one isn't counted right now, but
The abandoned farmhouse near
Isn't
Grimes?
the abandoned farmhouse after the driveway?
I
If you're
thought.
going up the
Yeah.
road,
Yeah, it's after.
So what's
that'd be the
one-
trailer.
Thinking it's a mobile home that sits on property owned by Grimes.
Are people living there?
Yes. His nephew, actually.
he actually looked at Google Street View today and it looked like a pretty decent normal house with a,
Well, there's,
like with a garage on one side and a house on the other, and driveway kind of comes right in between them.
well, there's an abandoned house that's falling down and then a mobile home.
The abandoned house is one we were talking about just past driveway, the Grimes.
That is after, yeah.
But so,
No, on the
right
east side.
before, it's right
so
before.
Peter, is that building that you're talking about just beyond the magenta line then?
It is, yeah.
Okay, so we would have to extend
We would end up extending it. It would still be within the allowable service zone. It would be different than the map we showed in the PER. My guess, I don't know if Emily wants to chime in. I'm guessing that that's probably not a huge enough change. That would be a
I
major
don't think
problem
there's
on
a
the end
need,
as
I
well.
don't think there's a need for it, just
because that's where the gravel is, sandy soil.
because it's, you know, part of that whole, Grimes property.
Okay, yeah.
It's not subdivided. The only thing is,
Could it be,
does it flood there? Does it, that's where the road floods and comes up, but it doesn't go to Mrs. Tatros.
could it, I don't know, be, when you're talking about ordinance and optional later on? They have as an option they could later on, maybe,
Could what?
like optional if later on they wanted to put a multi-unit building, they could hook on there.
Yeah.
Something conditional like that.
Just leasing, he's just leasing some land to his nephew. It's not something they can sell or anything, or someone else is gonna need it, I don't think.
Would the main line have to be extended to pick that up, Peter, or they could do like a lateral?
I think you could probably have a connection right at the end and they could
Okay.
go straight to that connection.
Cause that wouldn't be a bad spot if someone did eventually wanna put multiple units in, you could put a multi-unit building there.
Yeah, that's a good, if we, in the opt-out option, if it's a single home and it went to more than one home on that parcel, something like that.
I mean, in an ideal scenario, we would extend the force main right up to the property, kind of where my cursor is, if we were thinking that they were gonna be part of it. If they came along down the road afterwards, it would probably be more on them to engineer how they're gonna connect to the end of the line there.
So I think this is important because this would determine if we're gonna extend the line to pick them up or not before we.
What's the money like?
I don't think it's, we'd have to look at it, but I don't think it's gonna be so unreasonable that the extra connection is gonna make or break it. I mean, if you kind of look at some of the other houses that we've added, along past the Nazarene church is kind of the same distance. We're talking about, you know,
It's like a couple hundred feet.
couple.
Well, the one right next to the Nazarene church needed it. They probably lost part of their septic.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you talking, me thinking about this, are you talking minimal, are you talking, $100,000? Are you talking 50,000? I mean, I feel like I sort of would like to know that figure, looking at what we're looking at on this map. I mean, I just Googled it also to see, because I didn't really know where we were talking about.
I would say less than $50,000, probably 20 or something.
Okay, that answers my question. Out of the whole picture, the whole thing, if that's what we're talking, I'm all good about extending it all the way out there. I mean, but if you're talking 100,000, I think I'd want to bring this back to the table and talk a little more.
I think yeah, I mean, I guess my hunch is it's not gonna proportionally be a huge increase, and that the sort of service fees that those folks would pay would balance it out. But if we know they're not gonna connect, I would not suggest just extending it for the heck of it, probably.
I think we should, and it's like, it was mentioned earlier, the chance of maybe some housing going in there. I mean, I think, yes, there's a trailer and a thing, but I think we as residents need to think on the long term, not the short term here. with this.
Well, I guess I'm gonna disagree because, on that property, the Grimes bought a house. They've let it sit there and rot. They actually have two houses on their property, letting it sit there and rot just for protection of neighbors not suing them or anything because of their gravel pit. And so Kenny Grimes owns all that. I don't see him putting, as long as he lives, putting housing in there.
Okay, so Linda, that gives me a whole new perspective.
And
Okay,
if somebody wants to do it later and they're doing a project that makes it worth it.
They can have to run the main to where the current main is.
Right, exactly, which wouldn't be a big deal if you're doing a big project.
right, but let's leave it where it is, because
Okay, great.
not knowing those backside of these conversations, I mean, I was looking at it as like development.
Plus, he wouldn't even let us go on his land.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, okay, but no, then let's stop it where it is.
And we might have already had that conversation a year ago. I just couldn't remember the details, but.
So just for clarification, so we know what we're gonna be voting on. We'd be voting on essentially the magenta line being the main sewer line on Route 15 and School Street with the circles for each unit being serviced. Is that correct?
And the yellow lines is the outer boundaries.
Well, not necessarily, we're more following the magenta line
Okay,
with the service hookup circles.
For what it's worth, this is the same, you're sort of, I think it's worth codifying this again, but this committee already, or whatever members were here when we did this last year, this is what everyone chose a year ago. And in terms of connections, it really hasn't changed other than the discussions we had today about the buyouts and some of these.
We added those laterals on last time.
Yeah.
I think we were just trying to formalize it. Right, Linda, you thought we should have a vote on
I
it?
think it's a good idea to do that.
We don't need.
Basis for moving forward.
okay,
Okay, any last discussion?
no,
Do we have a motion to approve the village septic service area as defined by this map?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
Marcia made a motion, Linda seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have a map.
Okay.
Dated,
Sharing.
1/2/24.
And then we could point,
Down to,
okay, the map dated 1/2/24.
I'm afraid I have to go. I always do. You know,
Okay,
granddaughter,
yeah,
getting ballet.
do we want to scrap the ordinance discussion
Awesome. Thank you.
for next time?
It's up to you.
Maybe we can, well, we have JB here. I just wanted to, she was gonna go over some of the opt-out criteria. Maybe we could just discuss that briefly, and I know it has to go, but we won't get in the weeds on the ordinance maybe, but just, I think what we have
Sure.
JB on board.
Yeah, Jim, were you able to circulate that little list I sent out earlier today?
It's, yeah,
Okay. And
it's,
this is just
it's the back page of the handout for folks in the room. Can you screen share that? The folks on Zoom?
I'm not able to screen share right now.
Okay,
Do I have
we
it?
want to just.
Yeah, and I don't think it's
We have
essential.
that electronically, Tori, yeah, from what JB sent earlier today, Peter, in the email.
It was an email to all of us later today.
Do we know how to use the little viewer thing?
JB, so you're not, you don't have a laptop in front of you?
No, I'm in the car. This was a tough time to make.
Okay, I wonder if somebody can email Peter.
I
the
I
attachment.
don't know that it's critical, and I'm mindful of the time getting late for everyone.
Okay, we could just, let's just talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, towns have a lot of authority under Vermont law to decide who has to connect, who doesn't have to connect, and then authority to create incentives for people to connect, which is, I feel like, where Wolcott kind of wants to be for a lot of this. And basic math, the more people who are required to connect, the more financial certainty you have about your user fees, especially in the first years of a project. So the basic criteria that a typical ordinance is going to have for requiring connection is if you've got a failure. Now, and that there's no on-site remedy available. When we get this thing circulated, there are some decisions that you can make around that. Most towns will prohibit replacement systems if the replacement system for a failed is going to be within a flood zone, strongly recommended for Wolcott, or if it's going to create or increase any kind of trespass into a wellhead protection area. So those tend to be pretty hard and fast, that you want people connecting. The other sort of must connect is if you've got a property owner who cannot or will not affect a fix to their system, and they're within that service area we were just discussing, then it is entirely reasonable for the town to connect that to the public sewer. And then the way you get the money back is you charge it back as a lien on the property, like you would unpaid taxes. So those tend to be the kind of open and shut cases. Now, where it gets a little bit grayer and where you've got some policy decisions is, number one, change of use. So we were just talking about the shop, the building that could be a wood shop or could be expanded, or you could do some multifamily. It would be entirely reasonable to require connection if a property is going to expand or change its use in a way that makes it a greater wastewater demand. Some people are going to say, well, what if I could accommodate that with in my existing on-site system? You may want to allow them to do that, or you may want to say, nope, if you're going to expand the flow, you're connecting to the system. That's a policy decision. The other big one is, well, I can put in a fully compliant replacement system or a fully compliant new on-site system. Why should I connect? That tends to be a little bit more contentious. Some communities will say, no, if you can do a fully compliant replacement or new system, that's okay. You do you, you stay with the on-site. Others will say, no, I'm sorry, you're within a service area. You need to connect. So I suspect for Wolcott, our policy decisions are really going to be around you put in a new or replacement system that's fully compliant. So, you know, again, there's a big trade-off between getting people on board and giving people autonomy versus having a full functioning system, having more users, reducing the cost. So does that make sense? That's the sort of broad outline. And then there's a little more detail in the thing we can email around.
So,
Yeah,
So,
so Tricia first, and then we have Alan who has a
Thank you.
comment.
so I had a question for you. Is cost for cost? I mean, you know, we all know what a sewer system costs to install. And if we're saying that if you connect while we're putting this system in, there's no upfront cost for you. We're gonna
Right.
connect you in. You know, I think what we need to educate people on is the long term of like, you know, you are gonna be connected into this for forever, and you're never gonna have a sewer problem ever again that you're gonna bear the burden of.
Right. Education is different. First of all, it's different from the policy on the books.
Yeah,
And it tends to be, you know, if you want to require connection, then the education is, hey, we're really saving people money in the long term, which you are. You're going to get people though who say, I don't want to be connected to a system. I've seen it so many places. Why are you making me connect? I can put in a fully compliant system and I want to waste my money. We don't say that, but you know, do you really want to force folks to do that? The argument for it is you're going to reduce the overall cost of the community of that system.
Yep.
Against it is property rights.
Alan?
okay.
I think part of the ordinance should probably be in there. Besides the floodplain is the size of the lot. Is the lot big enough to support a full septic system?
Right.
If it's one of the small lots that can't afford the acreage, doesn't have the acreage with it, then you really can't stick anything there. That's gonna be the
Right,
big
and-
thing.
I think this is where we might want to get some input from Nate. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
On
So-
lot size that we were talking about, or some criteria, we really, at our previous meetings, we've discussed having the hookup being required or mandatory with very stringent opt-out options. If a person had an ideal site within a perfectly functioning and a permitted system and was not in the floodplain, things like that, we were looking at previously, and circling back to the affordability issue for the maintenance of the system that the village residents would be paying for, that we, in fact, part of the mandatory part was to make the system affordable for everybody in the village as well. But could you just maybe talk a little bit about some of the site criteria that you might want to see from a DEC perspective, as far as the ideal opt-out? If we're being very stringent, what would that look like?
Right. So I think that I don't want to speak out of turn because, you know, an on-site system for residents, you know, a system that's going to be smaller than 6,500 gallons per day would fall under a different program's jurisdiction. That would be under the wastewater system and potable water supply program. But they do have, you know, criteria like isolation distances and things like that. So when we're talking about lot size, I mean, there's, you know, distances from, you know, potable water drinking wells and things like that, that need to be observed. So yeah, I mean, there's also, you know, soils and all those types of site criteria that they would be looking at in that program to decide whether a site or whether a system could be installed on that site. So really it would fall under their jurisdiction in that case, whether a system could be installed in a residential size. So
Excuse me, can I just ask a little question about this? Is there any part of this that's not considered part of the floodplain? Tell me a little bit more about Wolcott. I'm sorry, I just don't know these.
I think that the north, some parcels on the north side of Route 15 may be out of the flood zone. But then we have ledge, a lot of ledge on that side of the road.
Right, so you're not talking very many that would be outside our flood zone, right?
Maybe the parcel we were just discussing near Grimes might be an exception because of their soils and
That's-
a little bit further away.
That's where Route 15 floods, though, and the road's closed, but
Okay.
Right.
So Seth, can I go right onto the state maps and I can look at this?
You can, yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
You could look at the DEC River Corridor.
Okay,
Is one thing to look at, and there's also various FEMA flood maps.
yep,
there's lots of different variations of whether you're in the flood zone or not.
Yeah.
This is the 100-year flood
Depending
zone
on
map
what's
and then the FEMA flood zone map.
Right. Look
I
at a
think-
100-year flood. We were talking in the past about the 100-year flood map. And also the end of the DEC River Corridor map. Because the town has adopted the DEC River Corridor layer in town. As kind of some no-brainers. In other words, if your parcel was, another way to look at it is if your parcel was outside of those areas. And the lot size was large enough, and you had setbacks to wells and everything else. That would be like in my mind, what our opt-out criteria might look like. I mean, we haven't.
Isn't it
It's
200
Right.
foot from a well you have to have and
Yep.
like
Well-
200 plus feet from a septic mound, you gotta be.
Guys,
Yeah.
if I may,
Yeah.
the way to write it, rather than trying to come up with our own criteria or getting input on criteria, is simply if a site is able to accommodate a fully compliant system under the applicable Vermont wastewater rules, whether that's the wastewater and potable water supply rules or the indirect discharge. If that site is able to accept a fully compliant system or replacement system, then you can let them do their thing. It may be one parcel in your zone. There are so many
gonna say,
constraints.
this
So
is like- Yeah,
Beth,
But
what
if
do you
it's written-
recommend though for documentation on that? Because folks aren't necessarily gonna wanna get a permit just to prove that they wanna opt out.
but Peter, the idea is that they'd have to get a permit to opt out.
Okay. I mean, I think that's reasonable. I just was asking the question and
It's
wanted to
what
make
we
sure everyone
wrote.
was clear.
So
Yeah, I mean,
what we're saying is that you would need a DEC permitted system to opt out.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, if you walk in for your building permit from the town and zoning says, or whoever's issuing the permit says, okay, this is all well and good. Are you connecting to the sewer or do you have a DEC permit for your system?
We're
It's
we're
a-
talking about the existing properties for now, Julie Beth, like,
Right, I understand that, I
Okay.
understand that. And the existing properties, if they're going to, I know we're talking about the existing properties, but if they truly wanted to opt out, well, okay, two different things. First of all, if we have people within the service area now who want to opt out, given the number of constraints and the impact of flooding, I think it would be a responsible decision on the town's part, and certainly a feasible one, to ask people to demonstrate that they could actually put in a fully compliant system if they want that badly to opt out. And that's different from what we proposed in Westford.
But JV, but what if somebody, I don't even know if we have any recently approved septic systems in the village after the new septic rules changed a couple of decades ago.
Right.
That if someone says, I have that DEC permit from the early 2000s, so my system should be okay because DEC approved it.
I think, okay, then.
I don't know if we have any of those, but
It seems it gets sticky, doesn't it? Because
it gets very sticky. You either let people, okay, let me just finish one thought. You either there's a binary here. You either let people keep what they have until there's an active failure, or you're going to say everybody's connecting unless, and then you put the burden on them to demonstrate, unless you can demonstrate that you could meet the state's criteria today.
I was just going to add that.
Yeah.
If somebody opts out, it could well mean that the neighbor could not drill a well. There's some situations where wells can't be drilled and the mortgage can't be obtained because there's an adjacent septic system. If somebody opts out, keeps that septic system, that neighbor will not be able to drill the well. So if they opt in, they could. That makes sense?
Yeah, so I mean, I think with what Bruce is saying, it might be even stricter in that you have to, by a date certain, let's say June 2026, if we're thinking we're going to be building in or June 2025, probably, if we're going to be building in 2026. I gave us an extra year that I don't think we have. But by, June 30, 2026, a property owner has to provide a DEC permit for an on-site septic system. And that system has to be fully outside of the floodplain and river corridor, and that system cannot overshadow any neighboring property. And unless they can do that by that date certain, they're mandated to connect. I mean, it's very different from the approach that Westford took, but this is also a setting that's different in terms of the river conflicts. Does that make sense, JB? Something to with language to that effect?
Yeah, I mean, that's really where you're gonna find yourselves, because you've got, I mean, the whole point of this system is you have so many difficult situations and constraints. And as you were saying, you've got people whose decision about, I want to keep my septic, can and will affect other people's ability to get water supply. And because of that, it argues for the town to really force folks to demonstrate that they can have an on-site system that doesn't affect others and doesn't put public health in jeopardy. And that's going to be a tall order on all but a very small number of sites. Now, by making connection free during construction, the wonderful thing about that is, especially since in our state's wisdom, we can pay for the building connections. It's kind of a no harm, no foul. It really lets people, here, we're not going to let you keep that system, but it's not going to cost you anything, and we're going to increase your property value. You're welcome. But for those who really feel strongly about it and who happen to have that land, sure, you provide the demonstration that you can do this safely, meeting current standards, and you do you. I think that's a very responsible policy. For future, if there are people who opt out, change of use, or if it's an abandoned building now, okay, change the use. Yeah, here, have onto the system. And if you have a lower no cost connection, then economically it can be very, very strongly incentivized.
Yeah, I think we've been pretty consistent that we want a no cost for hookup and minimal maintenance fees for village residents. And in order to do that, we need it to be needs to be mandatory. So we are going to put the onus on the opt-out residents. I guess it circles back to how do they prove that criteria? Like, what are we going to ask for them to prove that? And it might boil down to a DEC permit if they don't already have one in hand, a new one, a fairly new one.
It could, and it might be worth talking to a regional engineer. It could be something a little simpler and less costly to the property owners, like a site evaluation by a licensed designer and or professional engineer that includes soil testing, so test pits, and a signed and stamped letter that suggests that that designer believes that there's a solution, so that they, maybe have to pay for the test pits and maybe have to pay for the letter, but don't necessarily have to pay for a full design and permit application.
I agree with what Peter's saying. I think that's perfect.
Could we?
Right.
We can certainly craft
Can we
that.
capture that narrative?
I can.
We can.
Yeah.
Because I think honestly, we're kind of going way deep on this one. I mean, when I think about the residents all down through there, I think most of them are going to see this as a win for their property. Increased value, that when you look at the properties that we're talking about here, I mean, I think what we're talking about here is all this language is for maybe 5 property owners total out of the whole bunch. I can't even imagine any more than that, but just my thought.
I think, yeah, maybe if we can cobble together some language between what JB has said and what Peter has just said, maybe that, I think this is going to be the focal point of the ordinance. And it's essentially what we're saying is it's going to be mandatory unless you meet the strict criteria, and the onus is on the property owner, but maybe they can get some help from the regional engineer or a private engineer to prove that point with taking some test pits. And are they going to want to go through all that work? And bottom line is going to be, what is that going to cost? What is the maintenance cost going to be for the village owners, which we have yet to figure out, but now maybe we can put that on the agenda for the next meeting, now that we have a slightly updated map and revisiting some of those maintenance numbers. And we had some discussion about the town, the municipal and commercial, essentially subsidizing some of the single family units and also the multifamily units being the multifamily units, the commercial and the municipal units subsidizing the single family units.
You can structure the rates with different. You can keep that, but you break it down. You can break out the commercial from the multifamily, from the governmental. Based on the units, when you have your ERUs figured out.
Right.
And then then you can figure it out from there.
Right. Yeah.
Possibly in the next conversation, Jim, when we do it, maybe we could all see some maps prior about where the floodplains are. I mean, just so I have a little better understanding. I mean, I have no problem going online and looking these myself, but I think that fills everyone so we're on the same page.
Yeah, we did that early on in the process. Like I'm talking like years ago, I think when we first started and doing the looking at sites, and we looked at some maps, but we should revisit that. And also those maps would be helpful when we do our outreach presentations to the public. This is why we're doing it. Look, here's the river corridor map. Here's the floodplain map.
Here's the 100-year floodplain of.
Yeah. Here's the wet soils and everything else that this is why we need the system.
Yeah.
It'd be
Sorry,
good to have that imagery out there.
Right, I didn't go back too far on this one, I didn't really think about this, I mean, I haven't been involved too long, but I think that's really good too.
It's good. Yeah.
Thanks.
We can add those to our maps and have some variations that kind of show that.
I think that makes sense. And then they're all the same scale
Yep.
and the same layout.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe, I think this was a good discussion on the opt-out.
Yeah.
Options. Maybe we'll put the ordinance review further up on the agenda, so it doesn't get, it's always at the end of the agenda. Yeah, so we could do any other thoughts for next month? We'll put together another agenda, but so we continue the ordinance discussion, the usual stuff, the outreach subcommittee update, and then we can start really coming up with a format for that March outreach meeting and what we want to do a town meeting as well. So we can, that'll be an outreach subcommittee homework assignment. And continue grant funding discussions. And Peter, anything on the JV on the technical side that we want to discuss at next month's?
Not other than we're gonna start really cranking, and by then we might have some things we want to talk about, but
On the cost side, or?
yeah, on the cost side, we'll certainly, I don't know how far along we'll be in a month, but that's sort of where we're gonna be focusing our energy.
Yeah.
We did, Emily, over the break, just to fill you in on the engineering service agreement, which has been kind of lingering in the background. Emily had made some suggestions to make the billing and reimbursement process smoother. So we modified our engineering service agreement with the town that Emily over break, I believe, sort of approved. And so now we're just kind of in the final stages of that paperwork so that we can actually have an agreement to be moving all this forward. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, it might be, I think before town meeting, I don't know if we'd have updated numbers, you think, before then? If we can ask that Tom Minnie at the table or at that outreach meeting, that's gonna come up the week after.
yes, I think that would be smart. I can't make any promises on exactly what we'll have at that point, but I would definitely like some refinement.
Ballpark or range, maybe.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta run, everyone,
Okay,
we pretty much done here,
motion to adjourn.
motion made,
Yeah.
Great,
Seconded.
thanks, everybody.
thank you all.
Thank
Appreciate
you. So, thank you, everybody on Zoom.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great new year.
Take care, Emily.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
In there. I'll talk about you. Forget. Always run out of time, right? But that's good. I guess we're getting a lot done, but we're doing a lot in between the meetings too.